Here's a list of the 7 negative prefixes in English. So let's get started. Hey guys, are you ready to learn some grammar with me? I hope so. So let's get started. Number 1, ill. We use the prefix ill when we want to turn some adjectives into negative adjectives, and this is mostly used with adjectives that start with an L. This will be a lot clearer to you after we go through these examples. So for example, legal is the affirmative form, and illegal is the negative form. Legal means that something is not against the law. Therefore, you will not get in trouble if you do it. Whereas illegal means that something is against the law and you will get in trouble if you do it. Logical becomes illogical. Something that is logical makes sense, whereas something that is illogical doesn't. And literate becomes illiterate. So for example, someone who is literate knows how to read and write, whereas someone who is illiterate cannot read or write. I hope this makes sense. Here's a little tip from me, which I've learned through all of my years of studying English. One way of identifying an adjective is if it has an auxiliary verb be before it. So for example, we'll use the word popular. We know that popular isn't a verb because verbs show action. So for example, we can say she is popular. Is a form of the auxiliary verb be, so we know that this is an adjective. I hope this tip helps you guys. It's time to continue with our list now. So for number 2, we have un. For example, important in its affirmative form becomes unimportant in its negative form. Something that is important has a great value to it. It means a lot to us. Whereas something that is unimportant doesn't really mean that much to us. Popular becomes unpopular. Something that is popular is great. Many people enjoy it and like it. But something that is unpopular, or a person can be unpopular, means that people don't really like that or they don't like the person. Tie becomes untie. So for example, when we tie our shoelaces, we make knots so our shoes won't fall off of our feet. Untie means that we undo those laces so we can take our shoes off. I hope this makes sense. Oh yes, one more thing before I forget. So, do you remember the first example I used for popular? She is popular. You can see that this sentence has an auxiliary verb, whereas tie, we cannot say she is tie. It doesn't make sense. Therefore, tie is not an adjective. We know that it is what? Yes, a verb. So in this case, we cannot use an auxiliary verb with tie. Number 3, in. For example, dependent becomes independent. Someone who is dependent upon somebody else means that they live off of somebody else or they get help from somebody, whereas independent means that you really don't need anybody's help to do anything. Correct becomes incorrect. When something is correct, it is right. However, when something is incorrect, it is wrong. And finally, direct becomes indirect. So for example, if we want to say something to somebody in a direct manner, we just go for it. We shoot and we say what we think. However, when we don't really want to say what we are thinking and we allude to something, then we say it in an indirect way. Number 4, dis. So for example, appear in its affirmative form becomes disappear in its negative form. To appear means to show up, to be seen. However, disappear means to go away, to not be there. Agree becomes disagree. So when you agree with somebody or with something, you say, yes, I agree. It means that whatever they are doing, you're up for it. To disagree means to not think what other people are thinking. And like becomes dislike. To like something means that you agree with it, it suits you, it looks nice. However, if you dislike something, you really do not like whatever it is that you don't like. Number 5, ear. So for example, rational becomes irrational. We use the prefix ear when words start with an R. So for example, rational means that something makes sense, whereas irrational means that it doesn't. Responsible becomes irresponsible. Someone who is responsible can be trusted. They are accountable for their mistakes and their actions, whereas someone who is irresponsible cannot be trusted. And finally, relevant becomes irrelevant. So, for example, relevant is when something is happening right now and it's kind of important, whereas something that is irrelevant really isn't important and it happened in the past. I'm going to repeat ear one more time. Rational becomes irrational. Responsible becomes irresponsible. Relevant becomes irrelevant. I hope you guys understood this example. Let's move on. Number 6, im. So for example, possible in its affirmative form becomes impossible in its negative form. Something that is possible can happen, whereas something that is impossible cannot happen. There is no chance that it will happen. Patient becomes impatient. Somebody who is patient can wait and they do not get excited or angry because they can wait. Someone who is impatient cannot wait. They must go and do something immediately or they get angry. And mature becomes immature. Someone who is mature is wise and a little bit older, whereas someone who is immature, this usually means that children are immature. It means that they act in a childish way or manner. So, possible becomes impossible, patient becomes impatient, and mature becomes immature. We use the prefix im usually with words that start with a P or an M. So that's a little tip from me. Let's continue with our list. Number 7, A. So for example, political in its affirmative form becomes apolitical in its negative form. So for example, something that is political has to do or is linked with politics or even world politics. This can be a person or a situation. Whereas apolitical means that a person is trying to stay away from something that is linked to politics or even a situation. They are trying to make the situation apolitical, which means that it is not linked to anything that has to do with politics. Theist becomes atheist. So for example, somebody who is atheist believes in a higher power, whereas an atheist does not believe in a higher power and is totally secular. And finally, sexual becomes asexual. Something that is sexual usually has to do with the body, and something that is asexual doesn't. So, the prefix a is used with our examples. Political becomes apolitical, theist becomes atheist, and sexual becomes asexual. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe to our channel because we will be making more videos in English for you.